Well, hi, and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. I'm Renee Williams, and I'm here with my co-host, Billy Thomas. And we have got Christmas on the brain.
Tis the season, Renee. Yes. Thank you all for being with us today. Believe it or not, this is the very last live show we're going to be doing in 2021. It's been a great year. Thank you all for being part of this journey. We certainly appreciate it. It's been a very eventful year, and we're looking forward to a great year next year. But before we turn the calendar over to 2022, we want to wrap it up with a great Christmas episode. So we have got our very own friend from way back, Doug McLaren. Yes, Doug is here again today. Doug is the president of the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association. He's also a former extension forester here, and many folks know him across the state. But he's going to be talking about the story of the Christmas tree. So that's a great segment there. We're going to have Laurie Thomas doing the ever popular Tree of the Week and a kind of a Christmassy one.
Yeah.
A little Christmassy there, no doubt. And then we got Dr. Crocker on talking about some little pesky thing that can kind of, we like it, but it can also maybe be a little bit of a problem or an issue. So I don't want to kind of unveil that. We'll save that mystery for a little bit.
But also has a Christmas theme.
It does have a Christmas. All of this is Christmas theme. And then we will wrap it up with the Christmas bird count. This is an opportunity to get out and kind of maybe see some of the birds. And Laurie Thomas will be talking about that and what they're trying to do with that bird count. So really excited to have you all with us. If you're joining us via Zoom, please use the chat pod. And if you're on Facebook Live, use the comment section. We'll respond accordingly. But thank you all again for being with us. Renee, an exciting year and a really exciting episode today.
Definitely. So let's get started. So Doug, welcome to the show. And
hey, Doug!
We really miss you here in Extension, but we pull you in every now and then and get you still to do some shows for us. So, you're going to be talking about the story of the Christmas tree, and we put up Christmas decorations every year. And so how did this come about?
Well, that's what the whole 15 minutes will be about, explaining to you how the Christmas tree made its way into the America family's homes. Okay.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you, Doug. Looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to mention just before we get started that we recognize that this is a festive program that I'm going to present here for the next few minutes, and that there's people in Western Kentucky that are not feeling the festivity that other people might be. We understand your grief and your concerns and all the losses you have, both personal and property, and we are thinking of you, and we hope that you are able to get through this in a timely manner. But we will continue, and we'll talk about the story of the Christmas tree. So here we go. Centuries ago, we're talking many years ago, people had very little understanding of their natural surroundings. They did not have text, they did not have Zoom, they did not have the internet, and they certainly didn't have the web to explain to them the reasoning why summer went to winter and it got extremely dark earlier and earlier every day. So because of that, people didn't understand their environment. So for that reason, they started to come up with, a concern, I guess we might say. So I have a number of adjectives here that I would like to use to explain what was going through their minds, I'm sure, at this particular time. And the first one is days of extended darkness. They were simply seeing darkness coming at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and wouldn't see light of day until 9 o'clock the next morning in the Northern Hemisphere. Somber and bleak is another set of adjectives. Forbidding, another one. Dreary, very dreary. Gloomy, you can imagine day after day of dark, cloudy days with rain. Gray, of course, and dismal, very dismal. Cold to frigid. They didn't have homes that were centrally heated like we do today. And so for that reason, it was an extremely cold, barren time, very murky. And not only that, but with the inability to dry things out on a daily basis, it was muddy. And to conclude this, we can simply say that these were the times that tried men's souls thoroughly through and through. And again, we're talking centuries ago. And this particular time is what we refer to now as the winter solstice, which is December 21, which is the shortest day of the year. And I wanted to read a few things here. In the northern hemisphere, the shortest day and the longest night of the year falls on December 21. And many ancient people believed that the sun was a god and that winter came every year because the sun god had become sick and weak. They celebrated the solstice because it meant that at last the sun god would begin to get well. So next week on Tuesday, the days are going to start to become longer. And evergreen boughs reminded them all of the green plants that would begin growing again. And they recognized that summertime was green and that wintertime was bleak. And so what they did is they brought into their lives, into their homes, into their communities, things that were green, because they didn't understand, here's a few green things, so there must be a recovery system that will start growing everything again. And so what we're looking here is that they used this greenery all around them. And they thought that basically what it was a way to keep evil spirits away. And so they brought it around them as much as they can. Now, remember, these are pagan people centuries and years ago, and they knew very little about their natural environment. And that brings us to a time later on, and that is when the Puritans were here in America, or when they came to America, 15, 16, and early 1700s, you had these Puritan religion. Those people were throughout that particular religion was throughout the eastern seacoast, and it had a dominant influence in the people that were living there. And they did away with the greenery symbolism because they thought it was a pagan idea that, now the Puritans, they understood a little bit more about nature, and they understood that this is simply the sun going around the earth and the earth tilting. And for that reason, they knew that things would be better after the 21st. But they wanted to stamp out this pagan mockery of having greens. And so basically, they actually created rules back in the Puritan times when they were a heavy domination, and they basically would arrest people if they started using this greenery in their homes and in their home place, looking at it as a way to feed the gods of the sun. Well, things did change. We all recognize that things changed. We had a number of different groups of people, ethnic people moving into the Americas. A German influence was heavily done in the early 1800s. And with the Germans, they had maintained this concept of bringing greenery in during the Christmas season. Again, here we are bringing Christians into the country, and during the festive holidays, they would bring in greenery. It was just something that made them feel much better. So this was in the 1830s. Another thing that was going on across the pond in England, and that was that Queen Victoria was taking reign. Queen Victoria in the early 1800s, when she was younger, she remembered greenery in the castle, and she wanted to bring this concept back again. And there was a bigger influence that wanted this to happen too, and that was her husband, Prince Albert. Prince Albert is from Germany. And again, remember that Germany had this influence of wanting to have greenery in and around their homes. So here's Prince Albert now living in London, and he's married to the Queen. And he said, let's have this greenery. Let's have a Christmas tree in our castle, in our home. And so what he did was he sanctioned a Christmas card to be made. And this Christmas card was not the photo that we think about, but it was a sketch of the royal family around this table, and on this table was a Christmas tree. Well, you cannot imagine what probably happened when this card got out and people started seeing greenery and a Christmas tree. They thought, let's do this. I wanted to mention this movie that I saw just excuse me, just a short time ago. the man who invented Christmas. It was done back in 2017. That's not too long ago. And it's on a lot of your streaming channels. And it's a story of Charles Dickens writing the Christmas Carol. And of course, it was done for a movie audience. And so, of course, in the beginning, we had all the issues of down and trodden and such things as that. But eventually, Dickens created the Christmas Carol. He created the characters of an Ebenezer Scrooge and Tiny Tim and all the other classic characters in the Christmas Carol. And like all good movies, it starts off that things are looking bleak, but in the end, things become happy and everybody is happy. So in the end, the Christmas Carol has been created. Everybody, gets a recording of the Christmas Carol and then they move on, being facetious there. But in the last scenes of the movie itself, I remembered hearing this in the movie, and that was that he, meaning Charles Dickens, the character, walks into one of the rooms and he sees a Christmas tree. And his statement down there, you can see down there at the bottom that he recognized the fact that Queen Victoria had a Christmas tree in her home. And he said, it won't take long before it's all the rage. And that's exactly what happens whenever a person in power does something, people tend to follow it. So everybody started having Christmas trees in their homes. The Christmas tree, let's go back to America now. By 1890, the Christmas tree is being seen in people's homes. We didn't have electricity back in the 1890s, or at least it was not a consumption that everybody had. So what they did was they decorated their tree with popcorn, paper mache or paper foldings that resembled ornaments and such things as that. They actually used cookies that they decorated with too. But it didn't take long before the electricity came along and people started ornamenting their trees with electricity and light bulbs. The first I'm going to step back here one. The first Christmas tree that we see in a community was about 1900. Of course, electricity was then, and so they could ornate these things with that. And so 1900s, we start seeing communities that were putting Christmas trees in their town squares and such. And I want you to take a look at the date on this particular one. It's the first White House Christmas tree on the lawn. And it was back in 1923. So that tradition of having a Christmas tree at the White House lawn is less than 100 years of age. And so you can see time is starting to move along very, very quickly. And people started having these Christmas trees in their homes. So basically, that's the story of the Christmas tree. At one time, it was a pagan tradition not to have greenery, then to have greenery, and then to have a Christmas tree in your home. And this particular poem up here is actually a Christmas song. It's German in origin, and Tannenbaum means Christmas tree. And it simply says, O Tannenbaum, with what delight I see you. When winter days are dark and drear, you bring us hope for all of the year. O Tannenbaum, with what delight I see you. And so with that, you can understand we went from the dark to the illumination of the Christmas trees that we have in our homes every year now. So with that, I want to say happy holidays for the 2021 season. It seems that we've been in a holiday tradition here since late October, and now here we are coming upon the Christian Christmas day itself. So happy holidays for this past year and the season that we're in. And also I want to wish you all a happy new year for 2022. I recognize that folks in Western Kentucky and other sections of the country are not looking at things quite as well as what they did just a few weeks ago. But we do hope that everything comes around and is happier for you in the days to come, especially in 2022. So we are thinking about you, and I want to simply end by saying the happy holidays for everybody out there that is listening to us, and we certainly appreciate having you with us, and we'll see you in the new year. So thank you all so very much. Good day.
Yeah.
So much history just around a Christmas tree.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
I always knew trees were the answer, Doug.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
keeps telling me that. He says no matter
Tree is
what.
an answer to everything.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you. Being a part of the show and sharing that exciting story.
Good to be with you.
Thank
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah, thanks for all you do, Doug.
Yeah, have a good holiday season, folks.
We will. Thank you much. We'll look forward to seeing you next year out in the woods.
All right. So moving on to our
Yeah.
treat of the week.
Yeah.
Lori, if you could turn your camera on and explain a little bit about what we're going to be talking about.
So since it's the holiday season and Doug has already covered the Christmas tree, I wanted to discuss and share with you all another tree that we think a lot about during the holiday season, especially when we're decorating, and that's the American holly. So here is the American holly.
Wonderful.
I'm Laurie Thomas with the University of Kentucky Forestry and Natural Resource Extension, and I'm here with the tree of the week, the American holly. American holly, Ilex opaca, is a broad-leaved evergreen tree. Its foliage and berries have made it a popular holiday tree for centuries. It is also known as white holly and Christmas holly. American holly is a small to medium-sized tree that typically grows 40 to 50 feet tall and about 1 to 2 feet in diameter. Trees grow slow and typically reach maturity between 100 and 150 years. The tree has short, crooked branches, and the crown is usually rounded to pyramidal in shape. In addition to being a popular holiday tree, it is also a widely used landscape tree, and the berries are a favorite of many bird species. American holly is native to primarily the southeastern United States, with some occurrences in Massachusetts and Pennsylvania. In Kentucky, it's found primarily in the eastern half of the state. Holly grows on a wide variety of sites and soils, from sandy beaches to fertile mountain soils, but best growth is in moist, slightly acidic, well-drained sites such as upland pine sites. It's classified as extremely shade tolerant and is a common understory tree in the longleaf and pine forest of the coastal plain. Other common associates include sweet gum, American beech, red maple, white oak, and yellow poplar. American holly is a broadleaf evergreen tree with alternately arranged leaves, as you can see in the photo. The leaves are somewhat elliptical in shape, about 2 to 4 inches long, and they have spiny, toothed margins, so it's a really good characteristic. The leaves are thick and leathery, and the upper surface is dark green and shiny, and the underside of the leaf is much paler. The holly is dioecious, which means there are trees with male flowers and trees with female flowers. The flowers are dull greenish-white on both. The male flowers are in groups, and the female flowers tend to be solitary, and the flowers have a pleasant odor. And they are pollinated by insects, including bees, wasps, ants, yellow jackets, and night-flying moths. Trees flower in late spring. The fruit is a berry-like drupe, and the drupes are bright red and typically about 1/4 of an inch in diameter. The drupes contain 4 small ribbed nutlets, and they ripen between September and December and may remain on the tree through winter unless consumed by birds or other wildlife. Perhaps the most important in seed dispersal are the large winter flocks of birds such as cedar waxwings and robins. Since American holly is dioecious, trees of both sexes must be located in the same area to ensure fruit production. Typically, 1 male should be planted for every 3 female trees. American holly can also reproduce from basal sprouting. The bark of American holly is smooth and light gray. The bark doesn't tend to change as the tree ages or grows. American holly wood is one of the whitest woods known. It has white sapwood and ivory white heartwood, and the growth rings are almost indistinct. The wood is heavy, tough, and close-grained, and knots are common, which can reduce the usable area of wood. The wood must be kiln dried shortly after cutting because a blue-gray fungal stain develops on the wood. The wood also shrinks and checks or warps if not properly seasoned. Holly, especially the fruit, is an important wildlife food. The fruit is eaten primarily by birds, but some mammals, including deer and squirrel, eat the fruit as well. At least 18 species of birds, including robins, cedar waxwings, bluebirds, mourning doves, wild turkeys, and bobwhite, are known to eat the fruit. And small birds, such as the American goldfinch, use this evergreen for winter cover. The nectar of the holly makes excellent honey. The wood is used for veneer and to a limited extent as pulpwood and lumber. Greatest use of the wood is for specialty items such as cabinet inlays, small pieces of furniture, pens, novelty items, wood engravings, scroll work, woodcuts, and carvings. When dyed black, the wood resembles ebony, and it was used for piano keys, violin pegs, and fingerboards. American holly has long been a widely planted landscape ornamental due to the attractiveness of its foliage and its fruit. There are more than 1,000 different cultivars of American holly. The best cultivars are selected for bright fruit displays and attractive leaves and dense habit. The national champion American holly is in White, Arkansas. It is 182 inches in circumference, 64 feet tall, with a 63-foot crown spread. The Kentucky champion American holly is in McCreary County. It is 56 inches in circumference, 48 feet tall, with a 32-foot crown spread. If you'd like to know more about champion trees, check out American Forest National Champion Trees, or check out our Kentucky Division of Forestry Champion Trees. Now for a few fun facts about American holly. The berries are a favorite of cedar waxwings, and flocks have been observed to completely strip a 35-foot tall tree of berries in just mere minutes. Bernheim Forest and Arboretum in Kentucky has one of the best collections of American holly. Native Americans preserved holly berries for use as decorative buttons, and they were a highly prized trade item. There's a great deal of superstition around American holly. It was believed that planting hollies near buildings would provide protection from witchcraft and lightning. It was also believed that the flowers of holly could be used to turn water to ice. American holly is the state tree of Delaware. The scientific genus name Ilex is the Latin common name for holly oak, Quercus ilex, and the species name Opaca is Latin for dark or dull or shady, opaque, in reference to the dark green leaves. Thanks for joining me to learn about the American holly. I hope you get the opportunity to get out into your woodland, a local park, or neighborhood and enjoy the American holly, a holiday favorite.
Well, thank you, Lori. We greatly appreciate that presentation that you did. And, I've got a question that I'm wondering about is that I've got 4 holly bushes in front of my house that were already there. Now, is that a bush and a tree are the same thing, or are there 2 different things?
They are American holly grows to tree size. I mean, it could be, you can find it shrubby in the woods sometimes, but probably what you have is some cultivar that is a shrub. It won't grow as large as a tree. It's really common as a shrub. In fact, most of the varieties and cultivars and other species out there are shrubs in the Ilex genus. So
I know I have to cut those every spring, and I'm like, wow, 182 feet. I really need to keep cutting them. So the berries are they all edible then for birds?
For wildlife, they're very important for wildlife. And from what reading I've done, I would have never thought to have eaten one. They don't look, especially, they're very pretty, but they're not super juicy looking. It's like I wouldn't bite into it. But in all of the research and the reading I've done, like Sibley and in Harlow and whatnot, they say that they are slightly toxic to humans, but they're not to wildlife. They're great for wildlife. So
okay, well, that's interesting. So don't eat holly berries.
So don't eat the berries. Yes,
don't eat the berries.
It's a really nice tree to, if it's appropriate in your landscape, because it is a great cover tree. It provides that winter cover for a lot of our birds out there. So, and for some of your smaller mammals and stuff. So it's something to think about and to have that year-round foliage on there to add to your landscape if it's appropriate.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
Yep. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Laurie. Great series there.
All right. Dr. Crocker is next. And, this is something you're going to be talking about, something that we tend to, people are kind of like it. So maybe not so much shouldn't, or, explain a little bit.
Well, I do normally have this What's Bugging My Tree segment, right?
Right.
But this week we're going to be talking about something that does bug trees, a parasitic plant that nonetheless is really central to a lot of our holiday traditions this time of year. Mistletoe.
All right.
So Renee and Billy, do you have mistletoe hanging in your trees or in your house right now?
I do not.
Oh, well, you've got to get some.
Yes.
It's, the tradition. Hopefully you can see this slide
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Great. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about, what is mistletoe doing in your tree, but also what is it doing in your house and why do we hang it for Christmas, which is truly a mystery, and the mystery and the history of mistletoe, kind of, continuing Doug's presentation earlier about the history of the Christmas tree. We're going to be talking about the history of mistletoe as well as what it means for your trees. So here's a photo of what you might see in your trees, especially this time of year. It really sticks out because mistletoe is evergreen. So when your trees lose all of the rest of their leaves, the mistletoe will be there all year round. But this time of year is when you really notice it because it's lost everything else. It's lost the other leaves in its canopy. Most of our trees are deciduous. And what you've got are some hidden mistletoe that are still there. And as you can see in this picture, they are embedded in that branch. So here's the branch of the tree, and you can see this mistletoe, this other plant that's living inside and intertwined with that plant. So they are parasitic. They are parasites of trees in our area. And they have these thick, fleshy leaves that have a distinctive texture. They'll have small white berries, and where they are growing, there's a swelling of the branch there. If you were to cut through that, you'd see mistletoe tissue, bright, yellow-green color that's kind of embedded in there with the tree's wood as well. And how do they get there to begin with? They're not growing in the ground like most plants you think of. Birds eat those white berries and spread those seeds to new trees. While those birds are sitting in those trees, if they happen to deposit some of those seeds, those can germinate and penetrate the bark of that tree, actually getting into the vascular system of that tree, the roots of the mistletoe. The mistletoe that we have here in Kentucky is the one in the picture here. It's called Leafy Mistletoe. And it's also the one that you might hang in your doorway this time of year. And it's leafy because for a mistletoe, these leaves are kind of large and green. And that's significant because they're green, right? So what does that mean? It means that this plant, despite being parasitic, is photosynthesizing. It's getting its own energy from the sunlight. And while it is taking some things from the host tree that it's on, it's getting water, it's getting different nutrients from that tree. It's not entirely dependent on it. So it's a parasite, but it's what we'd call a hemiparasite, like not as bad as other parasitic plants that are out there, which is notable for us in terms of what's the impact that this is having. So if you think about it, most normal plants would get water and nutrients from the soil that they're growing in, and instead mistletoe has these structures called sinkers that are embedded into the branches and the tissues of trees, and they steal water and nutrients that way. But for the most part, they're really not too bad for trees, our leafy mistletoe, that is, because while they're taking some water, some nutrients, they aren't taking as much energy. They're photosynthetic, so they're producing energy as well. And it could be an issue, let's say, if a tree is totally covered with mistletoe, like in this picture here, you can see this tree has lots and lots of mistletoe, and we were in a major drought or something, or maybe it could increase a tree's risk of wind throw because you've got that leafy mass up there in the canopy during the winter, or ice storm damage. But in general, since mistletoe, our leafy mistletoe, makes its own energy, it isn't draining trees that much. So that's a good news, right? What's bugging your tree? Fortunately, with mistletoe in our area, not that big of a deal. But there are other parasitic plants, and there are other mistletoes in different parts of the world that can be more damaging to trees. So just a few that you might have seen, this is dodder, which can be an agricultural pest. There are dwarf mistletoes, which are a major problem, especially in conifers on the western US. And these might not be photosynthetic at all. They might get all of their energy from their host plant. And that's a much bigger drain on that plant than our leafy mistletoe. So just something to think about there. Mistletoe grows on a wide range of different hardwood trees in our area. You can see it on oaks, on walnuts, on lots of different species. And what to look for? Well, this time of year it really sticks out in the winter, but it's kind of got this ball shape to it, this nice rounded shape to it. And I think it's kind of beautiful if that's what you're looking for. Now, other people might see this and be concerned about the health of your tree, but again, good news, because it's typically not a major issue. And while we don't really want mistletoe in our trees all of the time, especially if you're thinking about that tree, it does play an ecological role. It produces flowers and berries in the wintertime at a time when most other plants in our area aren't doing that. So birds can feed on those berries, and they can be a great source of nutrients for them. But a note that these berries are considered toxic to humans and not something you want to mess with. But while this is a really familiar sight in our area, I mean, you've probably seen lots of mistletoe growing in trees and can now breathe a sigh of relief that it's not really doing much damage. There is this mystery of, how did we get our traditions surrounding mistletoe? And if you look around online and in other resources, you can find some fascinating stories about the history of mistletoe, the mythology that's there. And I think some of it goes back to Norse mythology. So in Norse culture, mistletoe was a sign of love and peace. There's a story about the goddess Frigg and her son Baldur having been killed by an arrow of mistletoe. And after his death, she vowed that mistletoe would be associated with love and never again used as a weapon. And so in Norse mythology, it had this kind of connection to love. And, that kissing tradition comes from there. Druid priests valued it, and it was a sacred plant to them as well. And, worth noting that in Europe, they also have a leafy mistletoe that's very similar to ours, but has a slightly different shape, and a shape that perhaps more is connected to its fertility aspect, as parts of the plant might have some semblance to human anatomy and that connection to fertility. So just kind of some background on those ancient uses of mistletoe. But then we get into, how did mistletoe get tied to Christmas, which is a totally separate story and a somewhat surprising one. As Doug mentioned earlier with the Christmas tree, this wasn't always the case. And I think it came about during a time when lots of these older traditions were being revived and connected to Christmas from the Druids in the 18th century and 19th century. These traditions are kind of reborn in that Christmas context. So maybe we got the tradition of kissing under the mistletoe from that old Norse legend and the connection of mistletoe being about love and peace. But whatever it was, it became immensely popular in Britain and spread from there into other parts of the British Empire and the English-speaking world. This was picked up in the popular media from stories, from cards, and of course, with the advent of television through that as well. And now this is a tradition around the world. So whatever the reasons for its popularity, the next time you see some mistletoe in your trees, you might think differently about it. I think, going back to those old Norse traditions, it certainly does kind of inspire some happiness this time of year when all of the other trees have lost their leaves. To see something in the tree that still is green and still has its leaves, definitely a sign of life during an otherwise kind of dreary time of year. So with that, thanks for joining me for some history on the mystery of mistletoe.
That was a really neat presentation. Thank you, Ellen. We greatly appreciate that. Yeah, I like that. So if you have mistletoe in your tree, then what should you do?
Well, I think most people should probably do nothing and just enjoy their mistletoe. If you have a small tree and it's accessible, you could prune that out. And, in that picture I showed of mistletoe and how it's growing, you can't just prune the branches that are coming out of your tree. You've got to prune that entire branch because that mistletoe, basically its roots are embedded and inside of that branch, right? So you can't just cut the twigs off. It's just going to grow right back. And I can show you right here in this specimen. This is a piece of wood, and this is the tree that it was growing in, and this is the mistletoe. And so you can imagine, even if you cut the green part that's growing off of here, this is still all mistletoe inside of your tree. So if you wanted to prune mistletoe out of your trees, you really need to prune that entire branch before that mistletoe starts. Now, that's going to be damaging your trees as well, right? You're pruning a branch out. And so I'd say, weigh the benefit of pruning that with the cost. In our area, our leafy mistletoes really do not seriously damage trees. And a lot of times when you see them, we're not talking about a branch that you can access very easily, right? We're talking about something that's way up in the top of the tree. Imagine wherever that bird landed and, deposited some of those seeds. And so that's not going to be something that you're going to readily be able to prune. So just some confidence to you that you don't really need to for the most part. I see someone saying, what if we wanted more mistletoe? Can it be propagated with the aid of, without those birds? And yes, there are people who have done that. Now it's a bit tricky to do, but it's worth a try if you really, really want to get more mistletoe.
Yeah, I had never thought of mistletoe in that way. Typically that, I thought it was just something that had grown on a tree. I didn't realize it actually, it's kind of like a mushroom. I mean, in a sense, is that right?
Yeah, actually, and some of the structures that mistletoe uses to penetrate the bark and between the cells of the host tree, they have the same name as fungi, as fungal structures that do the same thing to kind of build up pressure and push through that bark. Because if you think about it, that's quite a feat. The bark is pretty good at keeping things out.
Right.
So they have to build up that pressure and get inside of that tree. Does mistletoe grow in West Virginia? I would imagine it does. Yeah. But again, there are different mistletoes in different parts of the country. And there are areas where mistletoe can be more damaging than ours, just depending on, how much of those nutrients is it stealing from its host tree versus what is it making itself.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Ellen. We appreciate that.
Yeah, indeed. Very interesting.
Nice talking with you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, so we've been Christmassy. Let's keep it going one more time.
One more time with the Christmas bird count.
Yeah. Hey. All right. How are you all?
Welcome back.
Again, back again. I just wanted to share an upcoming or an ongoing opportunity right now. And so let me share screen. So the Christmas bird count is happening right now, and it is the National Audubon Society Winter Annual Bird Count, and it runs December 14th, 2021 through January 5th, 2022. And you might go, what is the Christmas bird count? But it is a long-standing program of the National Audubon Society. It's got over 100 years of citizen science involvement. In fact, it's 122 years. This is the 122nd Christmas bird count that's happening right now. Excuse me. It's a winter bird census where thousands of volunteers across the Western Hemisphere go out and count the birds. That's why it's a really big and one of the earlier citizen science projects that got established. There's approximately 2,100 active CBC or Christmas bird count circles across North and Central America, as well as the Caribbean. And I'll address those CBC circles here in just a minute. The counts are conducted during the peak of winter right now, December 14th through January 5th. Sometimes we get some of our harshest times there. And the information collected forms one of the world's largest sets of wildlife survey data. So think about it. They've been collecting data since 1900, essentially, on the birds all across North America. So that's a lot of data, very important to have. So each Christmas bird count is conducted on a single day. So it doesn't happen over this whole course of a period. Your organization, so for us here in Central Kentucky, it's the Central Kentucky Audubon. We pick one day, which is usually, well, this one is going to be December 18th, this upcoming Saturday, where we go out and cover our whole circle. So while this is Pennsylvania, but this is what it means by the CBC or Christmas bird count circle. This is a 15-mile diameter radius or circle that circle that we will cover, all of us in our organization, counting the birds in that area. And those circles stay the same from year to year. So there's a lot of history and a lot of data that's been collected, so we know what changes are happening based on those circles. They're organized usually as a group effort at the local level, or often by a birding club or a naturalist organization. And like I said, for me here in Central Kentucky, I'm part of Central Kentucky Audubon, and we'll do our count this Saturday. So to get involved, you can go to just type in Christmas Bird Count 2021, and it's going to take you to the audubon.org conservation Christmas bird count site. And then you can go click on Join Christmas Bird Count so that you can find out, and which I've actually have Kentucky circled here, you can find out if there are any Christmas bird counts going on near you. And so I've got my mouse down here on Lexington, and you can see our circle right here. It's a little south of Lexington. I actually count in Jessamine County. But all of the circles that are green and yellow are still open to participants. It means we need more people to help us count birds. So you can, if you find one, there's one close to you and you're like, I want to go out and do this winter, this Christmas, hover over the circle that's near you, and the organizer or the compiler of your area, their name will pop up along with an email address, and you can email them and they will get back to you and let you know if you can participate and where you need to count. But even if you don't participate, go ahead and sign up for American Bird so you can hear about the results of the Christmas bird count. So just a quick history about Christmas bird count. In parts of the United States, there used to be bird hunting competitions on Christmas Day. There may still be, but so ornithologist Frank Chapman of the American Museum of Natural History came up with counting instead of hunting birds in a given area each Christmas to build up a record of their numbers, starting that data collection on what birds were seen in the winter around the country. The first count was in 1900 with 27 birders that conducted counts at 25 different sites, tallying only about 89 different bird species. The 120th Christmas bird count took place from December 14th, 2019 to January 5th, 2020, and the count occurred at 2,646 locations with over 81,000 volunteers in North and Central America, the Caribbean, and the Pacific Islands. And the volunteers observed a total of 2,566 bird species. That was a phenomenal how much this has grown. And I know that was a great year. We actually saw, the first time I saw a short-eared owl at the Christmas bird count. So it's pretty awesome how much this program has grown and how important it is in collecting that data about our birds. What we've learned from Christmas bird count. So each annual count provides just a snapshot of birds at a given time and place. And so it's kind of hard to draw conclusions from year to year because changes kind of happen gradually, as we know. So to understand trends, wow, we've got all this data now. They've been collecting data for over 100 years. They can take that data and look at the trends and do statistical analysis over many, many years. So that's really important, much more robust, letting us know what's going on out there in our environment. Warning signs of environmental degradation show up in declines in bird populations in some types of habitats. For instance, what they've seen from the Christmas bird count is the sharpest declines in bird populations have been in grassland habitats, followed by coastal habitats. And the bird census data also informs scientists about the effects of climate change on wildlife. It's because this goes on in Central and North America. We're in the Pacific Islands and the Caribbean. So it's a lot of really valuable data, and it's been around for a really long time. So if you all get the opportunity, or you just want to join the Christmas bird count this year, or even if you don't, go in there and check out American Bird so you can see the results of the Christmas bird count, especially for birds in your area. So happy birding.
Well, thank you, Lori. We greatly appreciate that presentation. And, you know, I guess you don't have to know what birds are what, right? You just have to know how to count. Is that right?
You do need to know species.
Do you?
So,
okay.
Yeah,
so how do you learn that if you don't know that?
So the best way to do this, and this is how I started birding, was going out with someone, because birds move. It's not like a tree that stands still and you can look at all the characteristics. They're always moving around. So it's a really good time to meet, get to know people, join up or call your Audubon group that's near you. And they usually have outings, do them once a month. And for the Christmas bird count, even if you don't know your birds, they're always welcome. They usually welcome other people to come in because they want to help teach people how to identify birds as well. So it's an opportunity for you to start learning if you don't know, but they're going to, the people that are out there, there's usually 2 or 3 really good birders in each group when they go out, and they can help teach the other people who maybe are just starting to learn different, learn some of those different characteristics, songs, calls, and whatnot, that of the birds that we see out when we're doing a count.
Okay, wonderful.
I mean, what a great program, Laurie. 122 years, right?
Yes,
that is just, we don't have many things in the United States that are that old, right?
No,
so
exactly.
that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that and how others can get involved and excited,
Yeah, absolutely. Happy holidays.
You too.
Thank you. We've done it, Renee.
We did.
Another year in the books. Again, thank you all for being with us throughout the year. And we wanted to close with an acknowledgement of our friends and family in Western Kentucky and the other states that were damaged by the tornadoes. If you've seen the news coverage, it was devastating. And I mean, there's lost life, lost property, homes and families just destroyed completely. And it's going to take a long time for those folks to recover from that. So they're going to need our support, not only now, but in the future. So, I mean, it's a happy time for many of us, around Christmas and being with family and the like, but we just wanted to acknowledge and let those folks know that our hearts and prayers are with them. And we're supportive of all our friends and families in Western Kentucky and in these regions that were damaged. So, it's a tough time, Renee. I mean, we've got individually we may have stuff to be thankful for, but there's a lot of Kentuckians out there that are hurting right now, and our hearts are hurting with them as well.
Definitely. And we have some information up for people who have lost things, and there are several different donation avenues out there. So just when you do decide if you want to donate, just make sure some of them are legit, because people do have a tendency nowadays to try to spam some things, and it's not as great as we would like for it to be. But just make sure they're a legit company. But a lot of places out there are sending things to Western Kentucky, and including like our ag department. So if you want to know anything further like that, you can, Google it, and there'll be some things that'll pop up that you can see how you can participate and help out.
Yeah, it's gonna take a long time for them to recover.
It will take a very long time.
Yeah, so we just can't forget them after this quick aftermath, and the next crisis arises, right?
And I think that's a lot what happens, Billy, is that when something happens, everybody flocks down to wherever it is, and then within a couple of weeks, it what's left over is there, and it may still be that they might still need help. So it may be checking to see if maybe you should help in 2 weeks or 2 months from now instead of right now. Exactly. So yeah.
But all right. Well, we wanted to, acknowledge that and let folks know that there are avenues to help and assist, so, like Renee said, make sure they're reputable and legitimate, so we can make sure that the people get the help they need. And, but thank you all again for being with us. We really appreciate it. We really enjoy putting this show on and all of our guests throughout the year. But it's about you, and it's about those who care about Kentucky's woodlands and wildlife. And we want to be supportive of you. So let others know about this show. And also let us know if there's stuff you'd like to see on the show in the future.
I know last week at the conference, we've had some ideas. People came up to me and said, hey, did you ever thought about this? And we've come up with some ideas, and I've gotten in contact with some people about those. So, you never know what your idea may be on the show. So make sure you let us know. You can go to fromthewoodstoday.com, and there's a little survey link there that you can fill out and give us some ideas. Or if you have something wrong with a tree, or, you have a snake or whatever, you can also put those on there, and we can try to get those answered for you. I know Matt's done some snake ID just from some people sending some things in. So, we do listen, we do take our comments to heart, and we will try to get as much information out there that we can to help you all out.
Indeed. So make sure you come back and join us live on January 5th. We'll be back here at 11 o'clock Eastern time. We've got a great show talking about New Year's resolutions for those that are interested in woods and wildlife here in Kentucky. Maybe some of the things we can kind of get the new year started the right way.
Right. All right. So until then, we will see you in 2022. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.